In the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night, in the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night.
Hello everyone, I'm Anthropomantic Fiend. I do horror-related things on the internet, and this is my first time doing this from my dorm room in college, so just bear with me here for a minute. I had no idea if I would even be able to do this from here, so this is a bit of an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. You've probably noticed that the audio quality is a little bit different. That is because I recently got a new phone and my microphone doesn't really plug into the phone. There's no outlet in it that works for that. So I'm just gonna have to go with this sound quality for now, whatever that is. And I live in a dorm room now. There are other people who live in this building with me, so we will just deal with that accordingly. But really happy to be finally getting back into Heart of the Night reviews. But before I do that, I do want to plug just a few things really quickly. First of all, I never got to promote this on my channel per se. I promoted it around social media, but this past Tuesday I was on Girly Gore's channel discussing the Giallo films Blood and Black Lace and Knife and Heart. That was really lovely. That was actually my first official return to YouTube since I moved into the dorm, and we had a great time discussing two great movies, so I will link that somewhere for you to check out. I would also like to give just a quick shout out to my friend CB Smith. I tagged him to do Little Ghost Creations Summerween horror book tag, and as of my filming this, he has just dropped his tag entry, and he's a friend of mine who I think deserves a little bit more attention on his channel, so I will be linking that video somewhere as well. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the film Wishmaster. This is a review that was casually requested a while back by the amazing Learn the Conjurer, whose channel you should also check out. She is your host of all things spooky, creepy, weird, and fun, and the host of all aforementioned things in my opinion, so we'll be linking her channel somewhere, and she just asked if I had seen this movie, and if not, if I would do a review on it. And I had heard good things about this film for a while, but had not checked it out, so was really happy to finally do that now and make that my return to Heart of the Night reviews. And Wishmaster came out in 1997. It was directed by Robert Kurtzman, who also directed Buried Alive, The Demolitionist, The Rage from 2007, and also worked on films like From Dusk Till Dawn, The Dead Matter, and Night of the Creeps in capacities like makeup effects artist and producer. And this film stars Andrew Divoff, not sure how to pronounce it. He was also in The Hatred, The Rage from 2007, Alien Desperados, and Faust, Love of the Damned. This stars Tammy Lauren, who was in the 1988 TV remake of I Saw What You Did, The Stepford Children, and Bride of Boogedy. Chris Lemon, who was in Firehead, Just Before Dawn, and My Dog the Space Traveler, as well as Wendy Benson Landis, who is in Pretty Poison, the James Dean biopic, which is just called James Dean, and Burlesque. Not to mention that this film also just stars a amazing who's who of horror alumni in various capacities, from substantial bit parts to voiceovers to cameos, and that lineup includes Robert Englund, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Ted Raimi, Angus Scrimm, Reggie Bannister, just some amazing names. And this film is about a Djinn, probably better known in modern terminology as a genie, but the Djinn are not benevolent creatures. They don't want to be granting wishes. They don't wish anything good on the human race. And one particular Djinn, after making an absolute nightmare out of one wish that he was given to Grants is trapped inside a gemstone for centuries until, by accident, said gemstone is released from a statue when it is imported to America and is inspected by unexpected Alex, and she picks it up, gives it to her boyfriend, who is some kind of scientist, to, figure out what it's about. But by, polishing it off, she awakens the Djinn. It is released into the world and starts granting people's wishes, except he twists them because, if you don't word things very specifically and carefully, he's gonna find a loophole and he's gonna ruin your life and love every second of it. And as I'll get into, the rules are a lot looser than what we've come to know as Genie lore now. So all bets are very much off. And Alex is gonna have to find a way to put a stop to the carnage. So the score for this film was done by the legendary Harry Manfredini. I should have just mentioned that, like, so many people who are involved in this film really are just horror legends. I mean, it was produced by Wes Craven, Greg Nicotero did some of the effects. The story was written by Peter Atkins. But yeah, the score was done by Harry Manfredini, who is of course best known for scoring the Friday the 13th franchise, as well as movies like Slaughter High and House. And his score for this film is wonderfully symphonic and spooky, kind of leaning into the fantasy aspect of things, and at least in certain parts, there's a slight Middle Eastern-ish flair to things. Of course, all suiting the Djinn wonderfully. I can't say I can really remember any cues from the film, but all of the music suited the film very well. The Djinn himself is a fantastic horror villain. He's super imposing and really overly dramatic to the point of almost being silly, but still being menacing in a way that is just a absolute delight to watch. He feels like kind of a direct descendant of characters that just feel super imposing and super separate from humanity. I would draw comparisons to characters like the Tall Man from Phantasm, Radu from Subspecies, and to some extent even Pinhead from Hellraiser. In fact, probably especially Pinhead. And I can also see a direct line from the Djinn to subsequent characters like PG himself from Psycho Gorman. And kind of similarly to more comedic characters like PG, he will speak in this somewhat overly sophisticated, overly antiquated style, but then he'll kind of just drop in these little modern things, these little one-liners and swears that are unexpected and therefore hilarious. Like, he'll be on this very dark, dramatic monologue, and then just in the middle of it, he'll just go, "Fuck it." And it's delightful whenever he does that. Or he'll make a reference to Houdini in one particular instance that I found quite amusing. All of the horror legend cameos within the film I found very delightful, and almost all of them are used really to emphasize the Djinn and really try to make him this new badass horror character, basically by having him one-up in some way a past legendary horror character. So you've got him facing down basically Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund, Candyman, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Jason Voorhees, Ted Raimi, multiple Deadites from Evil Dead. Angus Scrimm is the narrator at the beginning of the film, so basically the Tall Man is the Djinn's hype man here, and then he faces down legendary 4-barrel shotgun ice cream man himself, Reggie Bannister from Phantasm as well. And by facing him down, I mean they never really even meet, but the Djinn fucks him up. The human characters are interesting here because almost nobody talks quite like a person, maybe with the exception of Alex, who I will talk about in a minute, but there's something a little bit cartoonish and exaggerated about the way everyone talks here, and I'm kind of used to that because of the stupid amount of cheesy 80s horror I consume, but there was almost something even more cartoonish about it here, and I'm not sure why that is. But notably, Alex's boyfriend has this really over-the-top silly mannerism, which can, to some extent, just be seen as him goofing off, but that's the only way he ever talks in the movie, so it just seems like that's the character, and it's really entertaining, but it's very strange. The one character for which that just straight up didn't work for me was Alex's sister. She just seemed a little bit artificial to me. When she is put in danger throughout the film, I still cared about the character, but the character herself wasn't that interesting to me. There's even a moment where Alex is like very emotional and blaming herself for someone's death, and her sister just goes, "What?" But it's not like this fearful what. It's very flat in a way that just doesn't work, and she just seemed a little bit lacking in emotional variety. She's barely in the film, but for the few moments that she's in the film, which are very emotional moments, she didn't have the kind of emotional variety and intensity that I kind of wished she would have, but that is a minor gripe. It's still a fine performance. Jumping back to the horror celebrity cameos for a moment, one of the biggest roles in the film is Robert Englund as the rather elegant, maybe slightly eccentric art dealer who brings the statue containing the Djinn, by saying that 3 times fast, to America. And seeing Robert Englund, who you usually see in roles like Freddy Krueger, as this really uppity, elegant, very gentlemanly and ultimately kind character is a refreshing change of pace. It's always nice to see actors play against type. And kind of getting to the heart of the movie, besides the insanity that is the Djinn, Alex didn't do a lot for me at first, but the more we got to know her, the more I really liked her as a character. That is partly because we are put in her shoes, and she is literally experiencing the pain of everyone that the Djinn is tormenting, because she has some kind of magical psychic link with him, because she's the one who released him via the gym. But there's also these other really great aspects to her. One of the saddest things, I think, is that she is seen coaching these kids in basketball and being this really great mentor to them and giving them this great advice that they can apply to the game and to life, but she's not really taking the advice herself, and she's just kind of falling apart mentally and emotionally, and it's very sad to watch. She does kind of gradually find her resilience as the film progresses, because she friggin' has to, and seeing her being this very self-reliant character as opposed to the Djinn, who has to basically manipulate someone into wishing for something in order to be able to do things, and as opposed to everyone else around who are, relying too much on things given to them by others and therefore being easily manipulated by the Djinn. There's just a really great contrast there that I liked. And story-wise, this movie just goes to 11 immediately, and it's amazing. Even excluding the opening scene, which has some of the most delightful effects in the film. Minor spoiler alert, like as soon as the statue with the Djinn in it arrives in America, the Djinn isn't even out yet. The Djinn isn't even trying to kill people yet. Someone accidentally drops the crate containing the statue on Ted Raimi and just crushes him into a bloody pulp. I mean, this is like the first scene after the prologue, and Ted Raimi has already died. That is where the movie is setting the bar, and I have to respect that. As the film progresses, we just get a lot more wonderfully creative kills, but also tortures, because the Djinn will also mess people up in a way that doesn't necessarily kill them. Like, someone walks in on the Djinn messing with people's corpses, and he's like, "I assume you do not wish to see this." And kid's like, well, yeah. And the Djinn is like, "As you wish." And then the guy doesn't have eyes anymore. And he'll even manage to take a wish for $1 million and turn it into just the most awful circumstances in the world. And I'm not going to even tell you how he does that, but I have to respect the creativity there. But oh my god, that was sad. But also hilarious, but sad. That said, there are just a few wishes that I don't think quite worked for me. One of them is the clerk at the store who the Djinn tricks into wishing she could be beautiful forever, and she gets turned into a mannequin. I'm sorry, but that mannequin is just not aesthetically pleasing. The actress playing the clerk is a very physically attractive person, and the mannequin doesn't look like her. So that one kind of fell short of the mark for me, but pretty much every other wish is rather delightful. The one other big downside here for me, or the closest thing to a big downside to this film to me, besides maybe that one wish not quite working, would be I think they spend a little bit too much time trying to explain the mythology to you. I don't think the film trusts the audience enough to be like, okay, we get it. The Djinn can twist their wishes, and I feel like everything is kind of inferred by the situation very easily, and yes, the characters need to figure out how the rules work so they can properly best the Djinn, but I think they spend a little bit too much time over explaining it in front of the camera so the audience can understand it. And it's just like, I'm fine with exposition and backstory and having a better understanding of the mythology of this, but you pretty much explained all of that with the prologue and the wonderful little narration by Angus Scrimm at the beginning of the film, so I don't know why we're doing this now. It's just the tiniest bit too much, but that's, a super minor gripe. Practical effects, as I've mentioned already, are just delightful in every possible way. They really bring the insane kills to life in wonderful, disgusting body horror ways that are worthy of movies like Hellraiser, in my opinion, and just push the envelope just as far as how much can we show here and how ridiculous can we make it. It is really pushing things into cartoonish territory in the way I think movies like Hatchet would go on to do, but I like the way this film does it better, probably just by proxy of it being more of a dark fantasy story and being able to be even more fanciful with the gore. Just makes it that much more fun to me. There's also a little bit of CGI and even I think a little bit of hand-drawn animation in one place, and those instances are quite cheesy, but they never feel out of place in the film. The tone of the film itself seems somewhat self-aware and cheesy, so it's passable within the film and never really bothered me at all. Visually speaking, cinematography is fine, costumes and sets are fine, nothing super stand out there with the exception of the Djinn, who always just looks amazing, as well as the Djinn's home within the gemstone that we get to see at one point in the film, and it is this amazing kind of tiny confined hellscape that, again, feels like something out of Hellraiser in the best way possible. And I also really enjoyed the less than period accurate, but still really fun sets and costumes that we got in the film's prologue. And overall, I would say that this film more or less does for fantasy horror, dark fantasy horror, if you will, movies that kind of loosely fit into that dreamlike, more fanciful genre of particularly 80s horror. Movies like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Phantasm, Hellraiser. This film kind of does for those movies what I think a film like Hatchet would go on to do for slashers. It's bringing in a lot of great alumni from the genre and basically giving fans what they are positive they are going to want out of a film, but it never quite feels like pandering. Sometimes it almost does, but I think all of the cameos are woven into the film in a way that feels self-aware without it getting in the way of the film's story ever. To be honest, I enjoy most of the Hatchet films, but they feel slightly pandery and the humor doesn't always quite work for me. This film worked a lot better for me. Maybe the dark fantasy genre is just a little bit more my thing, but this film just worked for me a lot better than something like Hatchet, with no disrespect to Hatchet intended. And I would absolutely recommend this for fans of especially Clive Barker-esque body horror like Hellraiser, movies like Phantasm, movies like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchises, movies that kind of twist reality into something nightmarish and can just go absolutely berserk with special effects. I feel like there might just be a little something missing for me here to make it like a personal absolute favorite. I'm not sure what that is exactly. Maybe it's just a little bit more character depth or something. I don't know. But all in all, this is pretty much everything I hoped this film would be, and I would absolutely recommend it to most horror fans. If this sounds like something you would probably like, you will probably like it. And for those interested in watching it, I am sure you can get a really nice physical release of this somewhere. I personally watched it on Tubi. You can probably do the same. I do know it's supposed to be leaving soon though, so get on top of that. That is my review of Wishmaster. Thank you for watching my video, and hopefully I will see you in another one. Bye.